Well, I always do. Can I pray for you? And right now, I need you to pray for me. It's been a bad few months. My wife Nancy, back in 2014, fell and crushed some vertebrae in her back too, and she had surgery for that. And then she fell again later and crushed two more and had surgery for that. And then again a third time, crushed two more. She had bad osteoporosis. But anyway, those surgeries caused an issue where she was always in pain, and she refused to take pain meds. She was a nurse for 30 years, and she knew what they would do, and so she, refused to take them. So she would just, ibuprofen or Aleve or whatever. And those surgeries, over the long term caused some issues with her getting a lot of spinal fluid building up on her brain. And so they were going to put a shunt in last spring, 2020. And the shunt goes in your head, and then there's a tube that goes down the inside of you, down into your stomach, and then it drains to your stomach, and then it's regulated by the shunt up there, which can be controlled, so they can adjust it, to even out the pressure. She was showing signs of pressure on her brain where she would lose her balance. Of course, that's why she kept falling. And then it was getting worse. She would ask me a question. I'd give her the answer, and 5 minutes later she'd ask me a question again. She didn't even remember talking to me about it. So anyway, she was scheduled to have this shunt put in back in the spring of 2020. Well, we all know what happened with COVID. And they said it was an elective surgery, so they closed the hospital, closed it all down so she couldn't have surgery. And it just got worse and worse and worse. She was slurring her words. If you didn't know better, you'd think she was drunk. She had no balance. I had to walk her to the bathroom, holding her hands out in front of me, and then walking backwards to get her to the bathroom. All she was bathroom to bed. And of course, I was taking care of everything else. Well, it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. Then it got where she wasn't making any sense for anything, when she talked. I mean, it was just gibberish a lot of times. And we couldn't get anybody to do anything. Everything was closed up. So anyway, she finally ended up being incontinent and losing her bowels and everything all over the bedroom, and it just got so bad I couldn't take care of it. I had her in diapers, and I couldn't take care of it anymore. So on Halloween, I called an ambulance, and they took her to the hospital. And at the hospital, they kept trying to treat her, with physical therapy and everything. And I'm going, well, she's got this, problem with the pressure on her brain. Why are you treating the symptom and not the cause? So they finally got it through their head. And she went into surgery, had a shunt put in, and they screwed it up. It wasn't set where it needed to be set. So they transferred her to another hospital here in Louisville that is a neurological hospital. If I'd have known that, I'd have sent her there in the beginning. But it's all the way across town. It's 30-minute drive. Well, she gets in there, and they've got the equipment where they call it like a GPS of the brain, where they can have a robot assist, putting the shunt in where it needed to go. And so they did the surgery again. They said shunt's placed just fine, everything looks perfect. But she was having trouble breathing and couldn't keep her oxygen levels up. So they had her on oxygen, and then he said, well, she got COVID, but all her tests came back negative. She had 4 tests the whole time she was in the hospital for COVID, and all of them were negative, but her O2 levels kept dropping and dropping, and so they put her in isolation because they didn't know what was going on with her. So I couldn't even go see her. And so then I guess it was the end of November. I know it was the end of November, like the last week in November. They called me and told me that she had been moved to intensive care, and they put her on a ventilator. And being a nurse, she never wanted to be. She always told me, "Don't ever let them put me on a ventilator." And so, and she told them, but they did it. They when she was in the regular room, well, the isolation room, they had her on 2 liters, and then they went up to 4, then 6, then went up to 16, and then they came in with the thing, 40 liters of oxygen, and she couldn't keep her O2 levels up. They don't know what was wrong. You know, they dumped her full of antibiotics, did nothing. You know, they couldn't figure it out. They did biopsy of her lung. They couldn't figure it out. They didn't know what was wrong. So anyway, so they put her on this ventilator, and she's in ICU. Well, they allowed me to go see her up there, but I had a gown up and everything, you know, with the mask and the gowns, gloves and everything, not going to see her. But they kept her unconscious because they got a tube down your throat. You know, you can't be conscious with that. And every day they would bring her out of it a bit and say, okay, squeeze my fingers, you know, wiggle your toes, stuff like that, you know, to make sure everything was working. And on December 1st, I got a call from them saying, you better come in here tonight because we don't think she's gonna make it. So I went in. They said, this morning when we tried to wake her up, we got nothing. She didn't respond. So the next morning I went in there. Well, I went that night and talked to her and told her I loved her. That it was okay, she could go on and be with Jesus. Don't worry about me. Because she always worried about me. Being a nurse, you know, she always worried about me. So I went in the next morning and she wasn't responsive, still wasn't responsive, nothing. It had been 24 hours. They said, you know, she should have been out of it a long time ago. And there was nothing to do. Her lungs had actually had ruptured, and they had put chest tubes on both sides of her chest just to drain the pressure so she could breathe. You know, and they had her still on the ventilator. And so they said, well, what do you want us to do? It was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. And I told them, I just patted her head and gave her a kiss and I said, baby, I'll see you in heaven. And they took the ventilator out, and it took about 20 minutes for her to pass. That's the hardest thing I've ever seen or anything that I've ever had to do. And I don't wish that on anybody. Anyway, so now, what's today? February 6th. She died on December 2nd. And we had her cremated. And her children are wanting to fix up the house and sell it. So they're doing that. I moved out and trying to get reestablished. Still got my wedding ring and it ain't never coming off. Nancy, I love you so much. So anyway, folks, just put me in your prayers if you don't mind. They say time heals all wounds. Well, I don't see that ever happening. That ain't never happening. Just my baby girl. Anyway, thank you for your prayers. Give me a little bit of time, and I'll get back out and start going around praying for all the neighborhoods again. I stopped for a long time. I've been taking care of her, and got to a point where I couldn't even leave. You know, I had to have all her food delivered and everything. Couldn't even go to the store because she would get up, and then, you know, I'd come home and she'd be on the floor, and I couldn't get her back up. I had to call EMS a couple times to come help get her up off the floor. So anyway, folks, thanks for your prayers, and God bless all of you. Bye.